Do college students want to change the Constitution? And if so, what do they want to change? Morgan over at Turning Point USA went out and asked college students this very question, and there's definitely a handful of scenes that I want to unpack with you guys. But before we do, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, please consider joining the Locals community, jamesklug.locals.com. Hit that link down below. It's free to join, and you're given the option of contributing as little as $5 a month. If you guys want to help out with the videos, anything like that, but also you just get behind the scenes footage and a lot more. Also, one more announcement before we get started. After Hours has officially launched. Episode 3 just launched a couple days ago. This is my car channel. If you are into cars and you want that weekly break away from the political madness going on, this is the channel for you. Link down in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump into this video from Morgan over at Turning Point USA.
What would you change about the Constitution and why, if you could?
I would definitely make more protection for minorities, especially I know our country definitely has more than a lot of other countries, but I still think that there can be more protection for people who are intersex or different skin tones or really different religions, because there's a huge, I feel bias towards Christianity in America, and people need to realize that this country is not Christian. It is full of all types of people.
Well, I mean, she's describing the describing the First Amendment right there. The first thing that she said, though, about protecting intersex people, that's obviously a medical anomaly. I'm not exactly sure what she's getting at right there. It affects 1 out of the current numbers. It affects 1 out of every 5,000 people, or I'm sorry, less than 1 out of every 5,000 people. I believe the current number is 0.018% of people. The other stuff, though, she's just describing the First Amendment.
100%. I think the Constitution was written with one type of demographic written in mind, and it definitely needs to be a lot more open towards the people that they have now currently and adjusted towards that.
Okay, so they just feel like people aren't being represented by the Constitution. I don't know. I mean, with that, I would probably I probably would have dug into specifics, asking them who exactly is not being represented. The Constitution's pretty general when it talks about, it doesn't say, oh, white people can do this. It's for all people in the country, American citizens. That's what it is. So maybe they're just saying that just because they think it sounds good and they don't exactly know. However, that is worth exploring what exactly they're talking about.
I wouldn't change anything just because I think in this modern day with political parties, I don't think any party would ever actually come to an agreement. And I think just how it was back then when there weren't really, so much division within each other, I think it's just best how it is. I mean,
honestly, good on this guy. I'm definitely relieved to see that response. And it's actually kind of an interesting point, right? Back when, even 20 years ago or so, the parties were completely different. And so when he's talking about there were more similarities, that is true, right? That is true. There were differences, obviously, but that is generally true. And perhaps any future amendments would be far more partisan than anything we've seen in the past. That's really interesting.
Process to adding amendments, I think it's perfect how it is, because I think you do need a large majority. But yeah, I don't think I would want to do any changes really with this day and age.
We'll take that response all day. Absolutely, we will take that response all day. And the fact that he brought up how he appreciates how it is, the process to amend the Constitution as well. That's fantastic to see. A lot of activists you'll see are very outspoken about wanting to make it easier just because they want to get their way and they want to just basically blow up the entire Constitution. And also, just as a reminder of what that process is to create a constitutional amendment, because I know sometimes we forget, it's kind of random. People don't really talk about it that often, so I often even forget the exact specifics. But you have 2/3 votes in both the House and the Senate, and then it has to be ratified by state legislatures in 3/4 of the states. There's also a way for it to happen just on a state level, but I won't dig into that in this video. But anyways, good to see that guy. Breath of fresh air. Let's just, I'll take that response all day. We don't change anything.
Putting it in a more defined separation between church and state, putting it in, oh God, okay, putting in more
I'm curious what she means by this. Most people just think it means so that the church isn't like getting involved in government, but it's actually quite literally the exact opposite of that.
Explicit child rights, because the US is the only country that did not certify the UN Bill of Child Rights, which is icky. And then also we should be able to change the Constitution, because it wasn't meant to be like the oldest document. It's supposed to be like a living, breathing Constitution. So I would also change more.
She may not know that it is a, living document and there are amendments to the Constitution. I'm not sure if she understands that just by what she said right there. Also, hold on, let's go back really quick.
The US is the only country that did not certify the UN Bill of Child Rights, which is icky.
Now, the UN Bill of Child Rights that she's discussing right there, the reason why the United States didn't get involved in that is because they didn't want to give more power over to the government so that they have more options to take away your children. More opportunities to take away your children. In the United States, we're obviously very big on liberty, or at least that's how we're perceived. But to some extent, that still does, definitely hold compared to many other European countries that have way more government involvement in their lives.
I would also change more of like the verbiage around like trans people. Change stuff to, instead of being like he for everything, change it to they. And then also
just change everything that says he or anything specific. Change it all to they. Well, I don't know. I'm sure that view is very common on college campuses. You could probably get a lot of people to support something like that because, she wants to change the Constitution to kind of form to her ideology there. Just get rid of all the he's. Even though it's not necessarily referring to men as much as man. Change them all to theys.
But like just a more defined Second Amendment. I don't think guns should be entirely banned, but definitely like regulated and better like understood.
Guns are definitely regulated. It's very specific, shall not be infringed. And he doesn't believe that guns should be banned. I wish I was there. I would love to hear more specifics on this, but you know what? Okay, that's his point.
I'm going to piggyback off of that with the Second Amendment. I think that guns should definitely be more regulated, and there should be things that you need to do to be able to own a gun that's not just like, hey, I want one. Because there's a lot of mass shootings and stuff like that, so I think that there should be regulations on whether or not you should be able to own a gun, and I think that we need to change that so it's not, you have the right to do it. Like, you can, but you don't need to, is kind of the misunderstanding right now.
I don't even know what she's getting at right there, to be totally honest with you. You can have it, but you don't need to. I don't think people are saying you need to have it. Perhaps I'm taking her too literally. I definitely understand, a lot of people want more things in place to protect against, let's say, mass shootings and whatnot. A lot of these shootings that we see are people that should not be back out on the street. They shouldn't be on the street in general. And they end up getting their hands on a firearm, whether they end up stealing it or end up getting one just because. It almost seems like every single shooting nowadays, the authorities already knew about them. And they were on the street after doing crazy things beforehand. There are countless examples of this. One that just comes up off the top of my mind would be the Club Q shooting, where he was charges were dropped for a kidnapping and a bomb threat, and then he still managed to get his hands on a weapon and go about shooting up a nightclub. I don't know how much more you can do to tell authorities that this person shouldn't have a firearm. Or not even a firearm. Doesn't even need to be a firearm. Dale Brooks with the Waukesha basically rampaged through the parade. The authorities knew he was mentally ill. He was a threat to people's lives. He was a danger. I believe he had been released early with like a $500 to $1,000 fine for something as crazy as battery. And he went out, later on and ended up killing a bunch of people at the Waukesha parade. So it's not even just firearms. It's us allowing these psychotic people to be back on the streets. take away all the firearms, you're still allowing these psychotic people, these dangerous people back on the streets.
Felons should be able to vote because if felons aren't allowed to vote, then there's a distinct like incentive for putting people you don't like in prison.
I actually think this is a really interesting one. I mean, if you served your time, let's say you're a non-violent felon, let's say, why not? What is the argument against that, I guess, if you served your time? I think that one's actually that one's a little bit more nuanced. That one's a little bit more of an interesting debate around what she's saying right there, instead of some of the other stuff that she was just throwing out there. I think this one's actually pretty a pretty interesting response.
There's this one thing that I think happened with I think during like the 1930s where they changed the senators from being a thing that a state council would elect, and instead they changed it to the popular vote. I think that was like Andrew Jackson or whatever. And on theory,
17th Amendment, Wilson.
you know, it's good. Direct democracy is always good, but I think we should revert that back to the state officials because, you know, not only what the original founders intended, but even in today's world, you know, we have the House of Representatives, which has the 435 members or whatever, and that accounts for a majority of the American public already. And just having the state representatives, the 2 senators for each state, I just think it makes more sense that, you know, these representatives now are representing like 1 million people each. So to have 2 citizens, like in the state of California, for example, where they're representing 16 million people each, like I think that's better for state representatives to choose those senators than for the people, for the public. Yeah.
So he's referring to the 17th Amendment right here. I've never really heard anybody complaining about that. I've never heard of people having a major issue with that today. I think that's really interesting that he brought that up. I'm almost more so convinced that he maybe just learned about it in class and he's just bringing that up because that's kind of guys, let me know in the comment section below if I'm totally off on this one, but I see this as, I mean, the argument for the 17th Amendment was to, you know, have state officials focused on state issues. I'm sure there's downsides to allowing the you know, the people to vote for that, but I also see total downsides for state legislatures picking senators for a state. You know, I think a quick argument you can make against having the people electing their senators. I think I just said state senators. I think an argument that could be made against that would probably be like, you know, the election, Fetterman getting elected. Possibly that would be an argument against that. But that would be basically saying that the state legislature wouldn't do something like that. I don't know. That's a really interesting one. It's very interesting that I brought that up. I wanted to include that in this video just because I thought it was an interesting point. I don't know if he's going to get much support or if we're going to be going back on that anytime soon. It'd be a hard sell to tell the American people that you're no longer voting for your senators. Probably not going to happen. He wanted to bring that up. Very interesting. Figured I'd include that. Let me know what you guys thought about this video down in the comment section below. As always, I will include the full video down in the description. If you guys would like to check out the whole video, go support Morgan and her work over at Turning Point USA. And if you guys enjoyed my commentary, please hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and hit that bell notification button so you're notified next time I post. And I will catch you guys all in the next video.